I am Jana Bosonko, and this is QTV News coming to you live from our studios on Caraba Avenue. Thanks for joining us. And here are the main news headlines. The Gambia's National Assembly election ended on Saturday with results from the IEC showing the President Adama Barrow-led NPP with a narrow lead, followed by the United Democratic Party and independent candidates. President Barrow on Monday received at the State House in Banjul the head of the ECOWAS Election Observer Group deployed to monitor the National Assembly election. The government of the Gambia's cabinet held a meeting to discuss various important issues and have adopted a paper presented by the Attorney General on the Intellectual Property Bill 2022. The IMF Chief of Mission for the Gambia has highlighted some signs of economic recovery and forecast that the Russia-Ukraine conflict will affect tourism and cause inflation in developing countries like the Gambia. And in international news, Guinea's ruling junta has given foreign companies until the end of May to submit proposals and a timetable for the construction of bauxite refineries in Guinea. Also, French President Emmanuel Macron will face far-right candidate Marine Le Pen in the second round of the country's presidential election. Those were the main headlines, and now the news in detail. Do stay with us. Thank you for joining us. I am Jana Bosonko and you're watching KTV News. Now, the Gambia's National Assembly election ended on Saturday with results from the IEC showing President Adama Barrow-led NPP with a narrow lead, followed by the United Democratic Party and independent candidates respectively. The election has been reported as generally peaceful but saw a low voter turnout.
Gambians went to the polls on Saturday to elect the 6th legislature across 53 constituencies in the country. In what one of the most, if not the most heavily contested National Assembly election, 250 candidates went into a race for 53 seats in the National Assembly. On Saturday, voting started at 8 and closed at 5 p.m. On election day, at most polling stations, Gambians filed in ones and twos to cast their votes in a peaceful and calm atmosphere. Up until late in the afternoon, towards 5 p.m., when the polls closed, the low voter turnout continued. Out of nearly 1 million registered voters, close to 500,000 cast their ballots in the election, making a 51% voter turnout. This marks a significant decline from and a sharp contrast to the 90% plus voter turnout in the December presidential election.
So far, so good. The election started well and ended well. No hitches, no problem so far. The only concern we had is low voter turnout, which I believe is throughout the country. So that's the only thing that we are worried about, because presidential, if you look at the turnout and the National Assembly, it's worrying.
Opinion polls and political analysts had predicted a low voter turnout on Saturday due to a sense of apathy and distrust among the population that is too focused on finding a way out to survive during a crippling economic crisis evidenced by skyrocketing prices of food commodities. After casting his vote in Banjul Central, President Adama Barrow spoke to the press about his high expectations for the NPP candidates and his alliance partners.
We were waiting for this day, cycle. Now we are voting for National Assembly members. We are very hopeful that the NPP will have the majority. Looking at the presidential election, it is a very clear indication that we will have majority in the National Assembly.
At the end of the race, the National People's Party is shown to have a narrow lead with 18 seats, followed by the United Democratic Party with 15 seats, meaning they lost 16 seats from their showing in 2017. Surprisingly, independent candidates won in 12 constituencies, giving them third position in the standings. In fourth position is the National Reconciliation Party, an ally of the NPP, with 4 seats, followed by PDOIS and the APRC, each securing 2 seats. Of the 53 elected names, 20 were re-elected. In the urban parts of the country, NPP experienced a heavy defeat, except for 1 seat in the West Coast region. Candidates of the National People's Party failed to emerge victorious in the Gambia's capital and the constituencies of KM. The National Assembly also shows Gambia's low level of women's representation in the National Assembly, still among the lowest in Africa. Out of the 19 women candidates, 3 were elected in the constituencies of Banjul South, Sanementereng, and Fonyi Berefet. The National Assembly election results show candidates from the National Unity Party, Gambia for All, the Gambia Democratic Party, the Gambia Moral Congress, the Citizens Alliance, and the People's Progressive Parties failed to get a seat in the legislature. The biggest loser being the GDC, which had 5 after the last election and now has none. After the election, President Adama Barrow is empowered by the Constitution to nominate 5 people for seats in the National Assembly. Usually from these 5 emerges the Speaker and Deputy Speaker through an election presided over by the Chief Justice after the swearing-in ceremony of NAMS. This is scheduled to take place on Thursday, April 14. On the table of the 6th legislature are much-needed developments for the country, which can be delivered through legislation and proper oversight on the executive. The draft constitution and the anti-corruption bill, if passed and enforced, will create a chance for a promising Gambia that is presently ranked among the world's 20 least developed countries, where nearly 50% of its population live in poverty. Passing legislation may not be easy, with no party having a clear majority. It also means the Assembly will not be a rubber stamp for the President. As such, Gambians will hope it presents an opportunity for cross-party collaboration in the national interest. Mahmoud Lamin Choi, QTV News.
Now, congratulations to the elected. Now, President Barrow on Monday received at the State House in Banjul the head of the ECOWAS Election Observer Group deployed to monitor the National Assembly election. As Alusisa reports, the mission hails the election as fair, free and credible.
The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, deployed a group of 40 observers to the 7 administrative regions across the country for Saturday's National Assembly election in the Gambia to support and monitor the entire electoral process. ECOWAS regularly deploys election observation mission to member states to ensure elections are conducted in a peaceful atmosphere for the consolidation of peace and security in the region. The head of the ECOWAS election observer mission, Dr. Mohamed Ibn Chambers, former president of the ECOWAS Commission, said his team observed a generally calm and transparent atmosphere.
I think in all of this, it is the Gambia which again has won. The Gambia which emerges, giving a good example to the rest of our sub-region. And let's face it, we've had problems in a number of countries in our sub-region where we are seeing democratic reversal, something we don't want. ECOWAS is fighting against that. We want to move forward and consolidate democracy. We don't want to see any backward retreat of democracy. So what we see here is a good given testimony of your reputation as a peaceful people in a peaceful country who have delivered peaceful and credible elections.
Ibn Chambers commended the IEC, political parties and all stakeholders for ensuring a successful election. He advocates constitutional and legal means of challenging any result for, if any reason exists to do so, and any party is aggrieved and want to challenge the result. He reveals that their discussion with the president also touched on the way forward for the country and its people.
Going forward, I think there is still some work to do because the last 5 years has been transition. There are some unfinished business. We've discussed it with Mr. President, and he has demonstrated openness and willingness to continue to work with ECOWAS and other partners to advance so that we can, for instance, have a post-Jammeh constitution, a new constitution consistent with the new democratic dispensation. And we can make progress with national reconciliation and social cohesion so that the Gambia remains one big family of people, so that security sector reform can be advanced. ECOWAS is particularly interested in this and is available to support. So in all of these areas, of course, dividends of democracies, creating opportunity for development, building of infrastructure, growth, employment for youth. These are all big-ticket items which Gambians alone cannot handle, but you have friends, you have partners, you have an organization called ECOWAS, of course, AU, UN, others, and you have many partners who want to support you.
ECOWAS supported the Gambia's democratic process includes several preventive diplomacy missions, the operational deployment of the economic mission, a military deployment, and engagement with the country's institutions, among others. Reporting for QTV News, I am Aliou Cisse.
The Gambia Cabinet held a meeting to discuss various important issues and have adopted a paper presented by the Attorney General on the Intellectual Property Bill 2022. Our reporter Mamadou Gajaga has been following the presentation and he files on this report.
In a lengthy deliberation at the State House, Ibrahim Silla, Minister of Information, Communication and Infrastructure, gave a rundown of the issues discussed. Among them, the Intellectual Property Bill, which will follow international best practice.
These are the conclusions of the second meeting of Cabinet held on 7 April 2022. Cabinet discussed and adopted a paper presented by the Attorney General and Minister of Justice on the Intellectual Property Bill 2022. Once enacted by Parliament, the Intellectual Property Bill will streamline the administration of intellectual property rights and make it a one-stop shop in line with the principles of ease of doing business and international best practices. The idea of enacting an intellectual property bill for the Gambia emerged in 2012 during the consultative process of preparing an intellectual property policy and strategy by the World Intellectual Property Organization in the Gambia.
To ease the burden of the cost of living in the Gambia, Ibrahim Silla said Cabinet discussed the current economic situation of the country, which is compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic and the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine.
Cabinet took note with concern the price hikes in the retail sector and its impact on the population. To this end, Cabinet has directed the National Economic Council to immediately convene a meeting to come up with recommendations that will reduce the shock on the population.
The Cabinet also discussed and adopted a paper presented by the Minister of Agriculture on the National Food System Pathway. He says they are intended to increase access to land to enhance productivity.
The key milestones of the pathway are intended to increase access to land, financing and other productive resources that significantly target women, youth and differently abled persons. Increase in the efficiency and effectiveness of the health delivery systems, increase food production by 100%, sustainable exploitation of the country's natural resource base, encourage more private sector participation in the food systems, and introduction and promotion of national food reserves and government to fulfill its international fiscal obligations.
Mamadou Gajaga, QTV News.
From that story by Mamadou Gajaga on the Cabinet meeting, we will now go for a short commercial break, and when we come back, we have some more local news stories for you as well as international. Do stay tuned.
Your favorite QCell service has gotten bigger. eFunkanta. Now you can loan bigger credit amounts to make life easier for you. Loan $75 and $100 and pay later. Yes, you heard me right. Get credit loan from $10 to $100 using eFunkanta by dialing *393#. Anytime you run out of credit, whether you want to buy Q-Power, browse the internet, make urgent calls, or send SMS. eFunkanta is the service for you. Dial *393# and choose the loan amount of your choice with no hassle. For more information, call our customer care on 111. QCell, Sunyabus, the pioneers of mobile loan service in the Gambia. We innovate, others follow. Terms and conditions apply.
Looking for the fastest and easiest way to receive money transfers from abroad? Well, Q-Money and RIA just made it happen. Now you can receive international money transfer from RIA directly into your Q-Money account with no additional cost. Once you receive an SMS alert about your transfer, walk into any Q-Money agent across the country to receive your payment for free, or use the money immediately to buy credit, Q-Power and other Q-Money services. It's fast, safe and convenient. For more info, call customer care on 133. Q-Money, Sunyu Kalpe. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back from that short commercial break. If you're just tuning in, you're watching QTV News, and I'm Jenna Bosonko. Now, a team from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, led by its mission chief for the Gambia, have conducted the fourth review of the program supported by the Extended Credit Facility. In a press conference, the IMF chief of mission has highlighted some signs of economic recovery and foresight that the Russia-Ukraine conflict will affect tourism and cause inflation in developing countries like the Gambia. Mohamed Lamin Choi has the rest of that story.
An IMF mission in the Gambia, together with government authorities, including the Finance Ministry, have completed the fourth review of the Extended Credit Facility program. After conducting the fourth performance review of the program in the country,
the outcome of what we call structural reforms.
The IMF chief of mission also disclosed that the Gambia had not fulfilled a few objectives of the Extended Credit Facility program, mainly due to economic shocks reeling from the COVID-19 pandemic.
The main areas where we had discussions with the government for this period is really related to how to handle the shocks that the country will have to face from the Russia-Ukraine war, which has implications both for economic activity, but most importantly for inflation and for the budget management.
The easing of COVID-19 restrictions around the world have had a ripple effect on the present economic outlook of the Gambia, with some positive signs of recovery of economic activities in tourism, construction, and the significant increase of remittance inflows.
We discussed with the government, as I mentioned earlier, the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war, which more specifically will put pressure on inflation, given that the global oil price is increasing. We discussed then how to address this issue together with the Minister of Finance, the GRA, but also the central bank, and we agreed on some measures and some approaches on how to address this issue.
From 2020 to date, the IMF have supported the Gambia with credit facilities, including the Rapid Credit Facility. There remains the possibility of more access to credit facilities from the IMF for the Gambia to address emerging economic challenges.
And also the Gambia benefited from augmentation of access under the existing facility. And as I mentioned earlier, the disbursement under the current existing facility will be used to help the government alleviate the impact of the global food and fuel prices into the Gambian economy.
The Gambia joined the IMF's ECF program in 2020, which provides financial assistance to countries with protracted balance of payment problems and economic programs aimed at moving towards a stable and sustainable macroeconomic position consistent with strong and durable poverty reduction and growth. Under this loan arrangement, the Gambia has received total disbursement of $55.7 million. Mahmoud Lamin Choi, QTV News.
From that story by Mohamed Lamin Choi, now let's take a look at news beyond our borders. Guinea's ruling junta has given foreign companies until the end of May to submit proposals and timetable for construction of bauxite refineries. More in this report.
Guinea's junta leader, Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, in a meeting with stakeholders in Conakry, asked that the industrialists ensure this was done before the end of May and that all raw materials used in the manufacturing process be produced locally. Colonel Doumbouya says the expected revenues are below expectations and that cannot continue. The junta head also warned that any foreign companies that violated the refinery construction deadline will be penalized. Guinea is the world's largest producer of bauxite, a main source of aluminium. According to the World Bank, Guinea's mining sector contributes approximately 35% to the country's GDP. Guinea currently owns a 15% stake in Block 3 and 4 of Samandu, while Rio Tinto and China's Aluminium Corporation own stakes of 40% and 15% respectively. Bauxite is a mineral used in the manufacturing of aluminium, which is essential for the automotive and food industries. With an estimated 7.4 billion tons, Guinea has the world's largest reserves of bauxite, Mining accounts for over 50% of the country's export. The country accounts for 94% of Africa's mining production of bauxite. The mining industry of Guinea was developed during colonial rule. The minerals extracted include iron, gold, and diamond. However, the benefits of these natural resources are not reflected on the lives of most of the Guineans. According to experts, this is due to rampant corruption, insufficient investment, lack of essential infrastructure. Since seizing power in September in 2021, Guinea's military junta has increasingly attempted to streamline mining activities and agreements to benefit what leaders have repeatedly dubbed Guinea's interests. The junta has spent months at loggerheads with foreign mining companies operating in Guinea, despite early assurances of continuity in mining operations. Samandu Mountains in southern Guinea is considered one of the world's largest mines of its kind. However, ongoing legal disputes and the costs associated with infrastructure have left it largely untapped. On September 5, 2021, the junta led by Colonel Doumbouya overthrew 84-year-old Alpha Condé, who ruled the country for nearly 11 years. To find a way forward, talks are underway in Guinea between mining companies and the military junta. Mumudu Gajaga, QTV News.
Still on international news, French President Emmanuel Macron will face far-right candidate Marine Le Pen in the second round of the country's presidential election. This comes as none of the 12 candidates received more than 50% of the ballots in the first round. Ajibintu Drame has more.
Emmanuel Macron has won the first round by 27.6%, and far-right rival Marine Le Pen got 23.41%. Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen are advancing to the second round of the French presidential election. The two top candidates will face each on April 24th. Macron urged voters to come out for the second round after the polls closed, saying, and I quote, "Nothing is settled and the debate that we will have in the coming 15 days is decisive for France and Europe," unquote. Le Pen's support has steadily risen in recent weeks. She is known for her far-right policies such as drastically restricting immigration and banning the Muslim hijab in public places. However, she has run a more mainstream campaign this time around, softening her language and focusing more on issues like the rising cost of living, a top concern for the French electorate. In third place of the first run-off was veteran far-right Jean-Luc, who warned that his voters must not give a single vote to Marine Le Pen in the run-off. However, he did not specifically urge them to vote for Macron. Voter participation was estimated at 73.3% according to IFOP Fiducial, the lowest in the first round in 20 years. Macron is seeking to become the first French president to win re-election since Jacques Chirac in 2002. Polls have given him a consistent edge over the rest of the field, but the race has tightened significantly in the past month. If Marine Le Pen were to succeed, she would do so where her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, failed on several occasions, with his much more overly racist policies. It will also put paid to France's self-image and the one it likes to give to the world of being a country of liberal values. Polling by EF Fiducial, released on Sunday, showed that Macron will win a second-round contest against Le Pen by just 51% to 49%. Given its closeness, neither candidate can afford to take the final result for granted, and they'll be canvassing hard to get those who voted for them in the first round to vote for them. Ajibintu Drame, QTV News.
Now, before we end this news bulletin, let's recap our main headlines. The Gambia's National Assembly election ended on Saturday with results from the IEC showing the President Adama Barrow-led NPP with a narrow lead, followed by the United Democratic Party and the independent candidates. President Barrow on Monday received at the State House in Banjul the head of ECOWAS Election Observer Group deployed to monitor the National Assembly election. The government of the Gambia cabinet held a meeting to discuss various important issues and have adopted a paper presented by the Attorney General on the Intellectual Property Bill 2022. The IMF Chief of Mission for the Gambia has highlighted some signs of economic recovery and forecast that the Russia-Ukraine conflict will affect tourism and cause inflation in developing countries like the Gambia. In international news, Guinea's ruling junta has given foreign companies until the end of May to submit proposals on a timetable for the construction of a bauxite refinery in Guinea. And French President Emmanuel Macron will face far-right candidate Marine Le Pen in the second round of the country's presidential election. Well, that is all we have for you in this edition of QTV News. Thank you for joining us and have a great week ahead.